Before the world knew its name, San Francisco was a whisper on the edge of the continent. A modest settlement called Yerba Buena, home to fewer than 200 souls, clung to the fog-shrouded hills overlooking a bay so vast it could swallow armadas. Mexican adobes dotted the landscape. Fishing boats bobbed in quiet coves. Life moved at the pace of the tides. Then, on a cold January morning in 1848, a carpenter named James Marshall spotted something glinting in the tail race of Sutter's Mill, 90 miles to the east. Gold. The word spread like wildfire through telegraph lines and ship manifests, across oceans and mountain ranges. "There's gold in California," the whispers said, and those whispers became roars. By year's end, the first wave had arrived. Merchants abandoned their shops in Boston. Farmers left their plows in Missouri. Sailors jumped ship in the harbor, drawn by a promise older than civilization itself: the chance to transform your life overnight. The sleeping bay was waking, and it would never sleep again. 1849. They came by the tens of thousands, from 6 continents, speaking 50 languages, united by a single dream. San Francisco exploded from a village into a roaring boomtown of 25,000 people within 2 years. Canvas tents sprawled across the hills. Wooden buildings rose overnight, only to burn down in 6 catastrophic fires between 1849 and 1851. Each time, the city rebuilt, faster and greedier than before. The waterfront became a forest of abandoned ships. Their crews vanished into the goldfields. Enterprising merchants converted these vessels into hotels, saloons, and warehouses. Portsmouth Square transformed into the beating heart of commerce, where fortunes were made in real estate speculation and lost at gambling tables. Prices soared to absurd heights. Eggs sold for $1 each. A simple meal cost $6 when a laborer in New York earned $1 a day. This was no ordinary migration. Chinese immigrants arrived seeking Gold Mountain, building the foundations of what would become the largest Chinatown outside Asia. Chileans, Australians, French, and Germans created a cultural mosaic unlike anything America had seen. The city's identity was forged in this crucible. Restless, opportunistic, endlessly reinventing itself, comfortable with chaos, and addicted to transformation. The Iron Horse changed everything. When the Transcontinental Railroad drove its golden spike in 1869, San Francisco became the western terminus of America's manifest destiny, the gateway where Pacific trade met continental ambition. The Silver Kings and railroad barons built their monuments on Nob Hill, palatial mansions that crowned the city like jewels in a crown, each one trying to outshine the last. Below them, the working city churned with energy. Cable cars climbed impossible slopes, opera houses hosted Enrico Caruso, and the Barbary Coast offered every pleasure and vice imaginable to sailors from every port on Earth. The city's population swelled past 300,000 by the turn of the century. Ornate Victorian homes painted in bold colors marched across the Western Addition and the Mission. The ferry building became one of the world's busiest transit hubs, its clock tower visible for miles. Yet prosperity cast long shadows. Chinese laborers who'd built the railroads faced brutal discrimination, culminating in the Chinese Exclusion Act. Working-class neighborhoods struggled with overcrowding and disease, while champagne flowed on the hill. Still, San Francisco had arrived as a world-class metropolis, America's great Pacific jewel, confident in its permanence and power, utterly unprepared for what the Earth itself was about to teach it about hubris. 5:12 in the morning, April 18, 1906. The ground moved Not a gentle roll, but a violent, wrenching shudder that lasted 48 seconds and rewrote the city's destiny. Buildings collapsed like houses of cards. Gas lines ruptured. Water mains shattered. Then came the fires, dozens of them, merging into an inferno that would burn for 3 days and 3 nights, consuming everything in its path. The proud mansions of Nob Hill melted into ash. Chinatown vanished. The grand hotels and opera houses that had defined the city's sophistication became hollow shells. Military dynamite crews tried to create fire breaks, but often just fed the flames with more debris. 80% of the city was destroyed. Over 3,000 people lost their lives. 400,000 residents found themselves suddenly homeless, camping in Golden Gate Park and the Presidio, wealthy and poor side by side in canvas cities that stretched to the horizon. But here, in the ashes, San Francisco revealed its truest character. Within days, plans for rebuilding emerged. The city that knows how, they called it, and they meant it. Architects dreamed bigger. Engineers planned smarter. Citizens refused to abandon their bay. From catastrophe came opportunity, and from ruins rose a determination to build something even greater than what was lost. 9 years after the fires cooled, San Francisco threw itself a party the world couldn't ignore. The Panama Pacific International Exposition of 1915 sprawled across 600 acres of reclaimed land, a gleaming declaration that the phoenix had risen. 19 million visitors walked through its jeweled courts and towers, marveling at electric lights that turned night into day, at technologies that promised to reshape human existence. The fair closed, but its audacity lingered in the city's imagination like smoke from a distant campfire. Then came the bridges. First, the Bay Bridge in 1936, connecting San Francisco to Oakland across 8 miles of water and steel. A feat that seemed impossible until it wasn't. Then, in 1937, the Golden Gate, that impossible orange ribbon suspended between fort and headland, defying fog and current, and every engineer who said it couldn't be done. These weren't just transportation links, they were statements of faith in the future, declarations that no obstacle, not geography, not depression, not doubt, could contain this city's ambitions. When the Second World War erupted, San Francisco became the arsenal of the Pacific, its shipyards working around the clock, welding Liberty ships at record pace, its population swelling again with workers from across the nation seeking purpose and paychecks in a righteous cause. While the 50s brought conformity to much of America, San Francisco cultivated its rebels. In North Beach, coffeehouses thick with cigarette smoke and jazz, the beat poets rejected suburban dreams for raw honesty and spiritual seeking. Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and Lawrence Ferlinghetti made City Lights bookstore a beacon for anyone who felt the mainstream was too narrow a river for their soul. This wasn't just literary rebellion, it was the beginning of something larger, a questioning of everything America thought it knew about itself. By the mid-60s, that questioning had become a movement. Haight-Ashbury transformed from a working-class neighborhood into the capital of a cultural revolution. The Summer of Love in 1967 drew 100,000 young people to San Francisco, seeking community, consciousness, and an alternative to a society they found spiritually bankrupt. Music poured from the Fillmore and Avalon Ballroom, the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane providing soundtracks for expanded minds. Communes formed in Victorian flats. Free clinics opened. The diggers gave away food and clothes, imagining a world beyond money. San Francisco became a laboratory for social experiments. Some beautiful, some disastrous, all sincere. The city had always attracted dreamers, but now it attracted those who believed dreams could reshape reality, that love and art and consciousness could be revolutionary forces as powerful as any political movement. The dreamers didn't disappear when the 60s ended. They organized. San Francisco in the 70s became America's laboratory for civil rights movements that would reshape the nation. The Castro transformed from a working-class Irish neighborhood into the world's first openly gay neighborhood, a place where people who'd hidden their identities for lifetimes could finally walk hand in hand down the street. Harvey Milk, a camera shop owner turned city supervisor, became the first openly gay elected official in California, telling young people across America, "You gotta give 'em hope." His vision lasted 11 months before violence took his life, and Mayor George Moscone's in 1978. But the movement he helped build refused to die with him. The city kept pushing boundaries, demanding justice, fighting for environmental protection, affordable housing, and the radical idea that a city could prioritize people over profit. Real estate values climbed as downtown office towers reshaped the skyline, creating tensions between preservation and progress that would define the coming decades. Then, at 5:04 in the afternoon on October 17, 1989, the Earth moved again. The Loma Prieta earthquake, magnitude 6.9, struck during the World Series, collapsing freeways and reminding San Francisco that nature still held the ultimate power, that all human ambitions existed at the mercy of forces beyond control. The 90s brought a new gold rush, but this time the ore was digital. Young programmers flooded into San Francisco from Stanford and Berkeley, from basements and dorm rooms across America, armed with ideas they promised would change everything. The South of Market, once a landscape of warehouses and light industry, transformed into a district of startup offices and venture capital. Stock options replaced salaries. 20-somethings became millionaires overnight. The dot-com boom felt like 1849 all over again. The same fever, the same certainty that conventional rules no longer applied. It couldn't last, and it didn't. When the bubble burst in 2000, pink slips fell like confetti. Office spaces emptied, and billboards advertising companies nobody remembered went dark on Highway 101. But San Francisco had seen booms and busts before. The city caught its breath, reassessed, and kept building. This time, the survivors learned from the excess. Companies like Google and Facebook, born in the valley but drawing talent from the city, built more sustainable models. The iPhone launched in 2007, and suddenly the next wave was obvious. Mobile, social, connected. Real estate prices that had dipped after the crash began climbing again, faster than ever. Longtime residents watched their neighborhoods change, corner stores becoming artisan coffee shops, dive bars becoming craft cocktail lounges. The tension between old San Francisco and new money was no longer whispered. It was shouted at city council meetings, spray-painted on walls, impossible to ignore. The tech giants weren't coming anymore. They had arrived and conquered. Twitter planted its headquarters in mid-market. Uber and Airbnb rewrote the rules of transportation and housing from San Francisco offices, and the wealth they generated was staggering and unevenly distributed. Corporate shuttle buses ferried programmers between the city and Silicon Valley campuses, their tinted windows reflecting a city they moved through but didn't always see. Housing costs exploded beyond reason. One-bedroom apartments rented for $3,000 a month, then $4,000, then more. Teachers, artists, nonprofit workers, the people who made the city's culture, found themselves priced out of neighborhoods their families had called home for generations. The contradictions became impossible to ignore. On one block, a restaurant charged $18 for toast, while on the next, tents lined the sidewalk, temporary shelters for those the boom economy had left behind. The homelessness crisis deepened despite the wealth surrounding it, a moral failure that protests and ballot initiatives couldn't solve. City Hall debates became battlegrounds over development, housing policy, and the soul of San Francisco itself. Was this still the city that championed underdogs and outsiders? Or had it become exactly what it once rebelled against? The question hung in the air like the fog that rolled through the Golden Gate, beautiful and obscuring in equal measure. Then 2020 arrived with a challenge nobody anticipated. The global health crisis emptied downtown office towers as tech workers discovered they could code from anywhere. Restaurants shuttered, some temporarily, many forever. The streets grew quieter than they'd been since the 1850s. For the first time in its history, people began leaving San Francisco in significant numbers, questioning whether the astronomical costs made sense when proximity no longer mattered. The exodus felt like an existential threat to a city that had always defined itself by constant growth and reinvention. But San Francisco had survived earthquakes, fires, economic crashes, and social upheavals that would have broken lesser cities. By 2023, downtown was stirring again with new energy. Offices converted to housing, addressing the shortage that had plagued the city for decades. Arts organizations reimagined public spaces. Tech workers who'd tasted remote freedom returned, choosing San Francisco not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because despite everything, the Bay still called to dreamers. The city stands now, as it always has, between ocean and continent, past and future, perpetually becoming never quite finished. Forever San Francisco.